Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The largest e-petition in Canadian history was presented on Parliament Hill, demanding that there's a non-confidence vote to trigger a federal election. Premier Danielle Smith says she's not ruling out using the Charter's notwithstanding clause to uphold new policies around transgender youth. And Alberta RCMP rolling out an 8 to 10 week field test involving body-worn cameras.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The largest e-petition in Canadian history was presented to parliamentarians in Ottawa this week. Petition 4701 has close to 390,000 signatures from Canadians who are demanding a non-confidence vote to trigger a federal election. Those who signed the petition say they have lost confidence in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his government.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to present e-petition 4701, the highest signed e-petition in Canadian history with 387,487 signatures. The petitioners state that they have lost confidence in the Prime Minister. The petitioners ask the state and the current government is not acting in the best interest of all citizens, and the petitioners call upon the House of Commons to call for a vote of non-confidence in a federal election 45 days following the vote.
Now, the 45th Canadian federal election will take place on or before October of 2025. The Trudeau government was blasted once again today over the carbon tax. Manitoba Conservative MP Brandon Leslie says the Liberal NDP coalition has to stop penalizing farmers who are putting food on our plates.
It's common sense. When you tax farmers for having to dry their grain or heat their barn, you're making it much more expensive to produce the food we all eat. Jim, a poultry farmer from my riding, is paying $5,000 a month in carbon taxes to heat his barn. This Prime Minister always thinks he knows best. He thinks that food just teleports to grocery stores, that it magically appears on plates, and he even thinks he can run Jim's farm better than he can. How much more does he suggest Jim should be paying to heat his barn when it's 40 below?
Our government has supported supply management throughout its mandate. For 8 years, we have supported supply management. $4.5 billion are available for supply managed farmers. And obviously, the member raises an important question. We understand that climate change has a huge impact on the availability of land and the crops. It has a huge impact on the profitability of farmers. We just hope that the member can lobby his leader of the official opposition to make sure that he doesn't slash budgets that are available for.
Conservative MP Leslyn Lewis rose in the House as well to pay tribute to Black History Month. Lewis says we owe a lot to Black Canadians who've contributed so much to our country.
From Matthew DaCosta's pivotal role as a translator in the 1600s to when we revel in Oscar Peterson's timeless music. And when we watch our children's hockey games, we can remember the innovative colored hockey league in Halifax that was founded in 1895 and where the first slap shot was pioneered. African Canadians have made substantial contributions to the Canadian society, including in academia, arts, science, sports, business, and politics. And as we observe Black History Month, let us cherish and unite in our shared Canadian past and our common future.
Canada's Public Safety Minister says the inquiry into foreign interference will have full access to secret documents. Some of that information, however, cannot be made public. Dominic LeBlanc told the inquiry that a balance must be struck between being transparent about foreign meddling in our elections and protecting classified material. The discussions on national security will set the stage for the Commission's next public hearings to take place around the end of March. That is when allegations of foreign interference by China, India, and Russia into the 2019 and 2021 federal elections will be thoroughly investigated. A report on these matters is due on May the 3rd. Well, this is Groundhog Day. Some groundhogs, such as Balzac Billy, say we're going to have 6 more weeks of winter, but the others, including Wyerton Willie and Puxatawney Phil, say an early spring. You know, I say we toss Balzac Billy back into his hole. It was nice having double-digit plus temperatures once again in Lethbridge here. It's already been feeling like spring weather already, hasn't it? Weather analyst Jeanette Rocher is now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, what are your thoughts? Will this continue, that we may have an early spring?
Well, I sure hope so, Hal. And I do like your idea of going with Phil or Willie, or should we call them Philly and Willie, and maybe throw Billy back in his hole from Balzac, because I sure did not like his prediction at all. I can't handle 6 more weeks of winter. Speaking of early springs, it almost felt like spring this whole past week with almost a record-breaking day yesterday. Today, still in the double digits. That's all about to change really fast, though. Beginning Saturday, we're going to dip down into those single digits once again. We're also seeing some showers, and then after that we're going to get back into those negative temperatures, and I'll be back later in the show to tell you about the snow that is expected as well.
Wow. Okay, thanks so much, Jeanette. Premier Danielle Smith says she's not ruling out using the Charter's notwithstanding clause to uphold new policies around transgender youth. The rules, which Smith says are coming in the fall, have been dubbed by critics as cruel and harmful to already vulnerable youth. Smith says parental consent is at the core of the changes because family is paramount. One change will require parental consent for students 15 and under who want to change their names or pronouns at school. Students 16 and 17 years of age, meanwhile, would not need consent, but the parents would need to be notified. The Lethbridge School Division responded to the Alberta government's Preserving Choice for Children and Youth news release. In fact, they released a news release of their own. In it, Board Chair Alison Purcell said, "We will work together with our students, staff, and families as we continue this journey. As a board, we will continue to ask important questions. We are thinking of our transgender students and families as they navigate how this may impact them." The release also mentioned that the Alberta Education Act gives parents the option to exclude their child from instruction that deals specifically with human sexuality or religion without academic penalty. Lethbridge Family Services says it has formed a partnership with Wellspring Alberta. It is a group that is focused on providing non-clinical supports for those who are battling cancer. Now, with this new collaboration, Wellspring's monthly in-person Cancer Connect program will be offered at LFS's Counseling, Outreach and Education location. Outreach Manager for Wellspring Alberta, Rebecca Perkins, says the partnership with Lethbridge Family Services is a good one.
At Wellspring Alberta, we follow a community participatory approach. So what that means is that if we're coming into a community to try to launch in-person programs and build a stronger cancer support community, we want that to be driven by the local community to meet their needs and to fill gaps that are identified specifically here in Lethbridge. We can't do this alone. We rely strongly on the generosity of community donations as well as partnerships. To partner with Lethbridge Family Services was a really obvious choice for us. We align with our missions. We both have a strong focus on diversity, equity and inclusion, and we're both out there working with people who need a whole variety of support services. We're also able to refer back to one another's different programs that we offer, so that holistically we're providing the people and the community of Lethbridge with a greater diversity of programming.
This was, something that we felt was very important. And cancer services, support services do vary across the province. And one thing that we know that is really important for people or caregivers who are facing cancer is that they have other people to talk to who know exactly what it is that they're going through. People who share that same experience. There is no substitute for talking about it with somebody who is going through the same thing. And there's no substitute for having those face-to-face conversations.
Wellspring Alberta has been providing cancer support in the province since 2007. In the past 4 years, it has expanded its reach, bringing evidence-informed programs and services to adults and families who are battling the disease. Canadian Blood Services is running a friendly competition involving our first responders. It is the 3rd annual Sirens for Life campaign. The group's business development manager, Brenna Scott, explains how it works.
We are asking all new and returning donors to join our first responders for the month of February and come in and donate plasma. We've done this every year that the plasma center has been opened, so it's a nice little friendly competition between the police, the fire department, all of our first responders to kind of see who can bring in the most donations and really help boost our February donation appointment numbers. Last year, we achieved just under 100 donations, and we are hoping to exceed that this year. And along with that, we're really hoping to bring in about 100 new donors as well. Each month, we have a goal of bringing in new donors because every month we lose a certain amount of donors from whether they're sick or they're deferred for some reason. So we're really always trying to keep our donation levels and our donors strong. So we're really hoping to bring in at least 100 plasma donations as well as 100 new donors. So hopefully people will, want to join the campaign, get some friendly competition going and join us here at our plasma center.
Lethbridge fire crews responded to a blaze in the 1200 block of 3rd Avenue South earlier this morning. Emergency crews received a call about 5:35 a.m. about a dumpster fire that spread to a local business. Fire crews from 3 stations were able to quickly put out the blaze. Unfortunately, there were no injuries. The cause of the fire is under investigation and damage is estimated to be under $50,000. RCMP officers in our province are going to be field testing body-worn cameras. Officials say this is part of ongoing efforts to be more transparent and accountable to the communities they serve. Starting this month, frontline members in Grand Prairie, St. Paul, and Parkland County will all be wearing the body-worn cameras. Officials say the field test will run 8 to 10 weeks. Corporal Troy Savinov of the Alberta RCMP explains the main reasoning behind getting these cameras.
Well, obviously, there's been concerns, in recent years. It's all over the news about, racialized and Indigenous communities concerned about transparency within many police forces, and the RCMP are certainly no different. And one way the federal government has, decided to combat this is an investment of $238 million to roll out body-worn cameras across the country. And the RCMP, we've been working on a plan on how to roll these out for some time. Recently, we had a previous set of body-worn cameras that we had tried out. They didn't quite meet what we were hoping. And we asked a separate contractor. Now, this is the second time that we've tried out a new set now of body-worn cameras.
Corporal Savinkov says the body-worn camera field test is not only taking place here in Alberta, but also at RCMP detachments in Nova Scotia and Nunavut. He says once the field test is complete, the RCMP may be rolling out another 10,000 cameras to other detachments across the country in the next 12 to 18 months, costing around $3,000 each, or $30 million in total. Did you know that Alberta is treasure trove to dinosaur bones and fossils? Don Henderson, the curator of dinosaurs at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, shares what kind of dinosaurs inhabited our province.
We are the best place in the world for the horned dinosaurs, so things like Triceratops and its relatives. More than half of all the known kinds are from this province alone. We've got 5 kinds of tyrannosaur. We've got all sorts of duck-billed dinosaurs. We've got armored dinosaurs. The things we don't have are the long-necked sauropods and the stegosaurs, the things with the plates on their backs. Our rocks are too young for stegosaurs, and our ancient environments weren't good for the giant sauropods. They were still around in the United States, but they never got this far north.
Don Henderson will also share with BCN's Jeanette Rocher about the dinosaur fossil discovered near Lethbridge back in 2007. He'll have details coming up later in our show. It is the Chinese New Year, but for the Christian families who live in China, this year is set to bring increased surveillance and persecution. As Andrew Boyd from Release International reports now, the communist country is targeting Christian children.
Chinese Christians are braced for a year of growing persecution, targeting children and Christian families. School children who admit their faith are being required by the Communist Party to sign a declaration that they will renounce Christianity. Release International supports persecuted Christians around the world. Bob Fu is RI's China partner.
For the first time, millions of Chinese children are forced to sign a form, these Christian children, to renounce their faith in public. The teachers, the children, all have to mark whether they are Christians or not. And if they admit it, they are Christians, then they were asked to sign a Communist Party propaganda department form to renounce their faith. And if the parents and grandparents are not working hard or refuse to cooperate to make their children denounce their faith, then their job security would be jeopardized. We have received cases showing even grandparents would lose their public health and public welfare if they did not dissuade them from believing Christianity.
One mother who was holding a Sunday school class for her 5 children at home found herself surrounded by police and arrested after her husband betrayed her to the authorities. Release International's 2024 Persecution Trends Report reveals persecution is deepening in China. Some state-registered churches have been prevented from meeting, their pastors arrested, and their crosses torn down. Many Christians have to gather in secret to experience any freedom of worship. They risk surveillance and arrest. Release International's partners say the persecution of Christians in China is every bit as bad as the dark days of the Cultural Revolution. In the words of Bob Fu, the Communist Party has declared war against the cross. The authorities appear increasingly desperate to stop the rapid growth of Christianity in China, where some say there are now more Christians than communists.
More Christians than communists in China. Wow. There's been a strong wow factor with our weather this week, but things are about to change this weekend. Full weather details are coming up. The reservoirs here in southwestern Alberta are either very low or have dried up entirely. Fortunately, more moisture is on the way. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it's been nice enjoying the very warm temperatures this week, but we could really use more rain or snow, and both may be on the way this weekend?
Yeah, you're right. Both are on their way, and what a change it's going to be. We go from double digits. We actually got well above that high of 11 today. We were up close to 15, 16 degrees this afternoon. And yesterday we almost broke that record of 17. We got very close to that. And then look what's happening. Balzac Billy decides to see his shadow, and suddenly look what happens. Could that really mean 6 more weeks of winter? I hope not. Looking at 5 degrees tomorrow, looking at a 60% chance of showers on Saturday, and then we're going to see periods of snow on Sunday. Then we're going to get back down into the seasonal range of the negatives. So basically anything under 0 is seasonal for this time of year. -4 on Sunday, -5 on Monday. Looking at flurries again on Tuesday, -6 for a high, and then -5 for both Wednesday and Thursday. Looking at 30% chance of flurries for both of those days. So I guess it's bye-bye spring, hello winter once again. Average high for this time of year 0, average low -12. 19, that was our record high on this day back in 1962, and our record low was back in 1996, and it was -41. Good thing we weren't at that today. Okay, sun rose this morning at 8:03, sunset this evening at 5:28. We're getting so close to that 9.5-hour mark. We're looking at 9 hours, 25 minutes of daylight, 2 minutes longer than we saw yesterday. Fairly drizzly one on the west coast tomorrow, looking at a 40% chance of drizzle in Victoria, 8 for a high, 9 for a high tomorrow in Vancouver, looking at 30% chance of drizzle. Mainly sunny skies in Edmonton, and then increasing clouds throughout the day, high of 3 degrees, 4 for a high in Calgary. Calgary could see a mix of some rain and some snow there as well. As we get into the rest of the prairies, we're looking at mainly sunny conditions in both Saskatoon and Regina, looking at a high of 4 there in Saskatoon, 8 for a high in Regina, high of 4 degrees in Winnipeg with a mix of sun and cloud. Not bad at all considering it's the prairies and it is February. Okay, high of 4 degrees expected in Toronto tomorrow. Ottawa looking at a -2 for a high with clearing skies. And then we're seeing increasing clouds as well in Montreal tomorrow with a high of -3. A little bit of a different story as we start to get into Atlantic Canada, maybe not so much for Fredericton, looking at a high of -4, but in Halifax expecting 10 to 15 centimeters of snow, 0 for a high, -2 expected to be the high tomorrow in Charlottetown, looking at 5 to 10 centimeters of snow. Mix of sun and cloud in St. John's, -2 for a high, and then I also have to mention that there are some winter storm events that are expected Sunday night through midweek in this whole area. So we're looking at Nova Scotia, PEI, and St. John's and Newfoundland and Labrador area. So expect some winter storm conditions beginning on Sunday evening. And there you have it. That is your forecast.
Grocery experts say instead of enticing a foreign grocer to come to Canada, Ottawa should look at ways to support smaller and regional grocery companies to boost competition. Industry Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne says he has been reaching out to foreign grocery companies about coming to Canada. But Peter Chapman, founder of consulting firm SKU Food and a former Loblaw executive, says it's not easy for a foreign chain to come to our country. Canada's relatively small population and spread out geography make it a real challenge for companies to build up a network of stores and distribution centres. Chapman says there are already lots of smaller and regional grocery companies in Canada that the government could be boosting in the name of competition. International Trade Minister Mary Ng says the United States Commerce Department has signaled it intends to raise duties on softwood lumber. Ng calls the duties, which would rise from 8.05% to 13.86%, entirely unwarranted. She says Canada will fight the duties by every means possible, including litigation through existing trade agreements and the World Trade Organization. This is the latest in the bilateral back and forth that Ottawa says has impacted the cost and supply of housing. Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan says that in order to close pay and representation gaps, the federal government has to know where those gaps are. That's why he says Ottawa is launching a new pay transparency website. The site will offer comparable data on workforce representation rates and pay gaps experienced by 4 key groups at federally regulated private sector employers. The groups are women, Indigenous peoples, people with disabilities, and members of visible minorities. The data can be searched based on employers, sectors, or locations. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 34 points on the day to finish at 21,085. The Dow was up 134 points to 38,654. The S&P 500 was up 52 on the day to 4958, and the Nasdaq was up 267 points to 15,628. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down $1.48 to $72.34 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 5 cents to $2.10 US. Gold was down $15.42 to $2,039.57 US an ounce, and silver was down 49 cents to $22.69 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.71 per bushel, barley's at $6.27, canola's at $13.10, and corn is at $7.60 per bushel. Live cattle were up 80 cents to $180.55. Feeder cattle March contract were down 8 cents to $244.80, and lean hogs were down 35 cents to $75.45. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to $74.27 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the largest e-petition in Canadian history was presented to parliamentarians in Ottawa this week. Petition 4701 has close to 390,000 signatures from Canadians demanding a non-confidence vote to force a federal election. Those who signed the petition say they have lost confidence in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his government and want to have an election right now. The next federal election is slated on or before October of 2025. The Royal Tyrrell Museum is a must-see for tourists who come to our province and who want to learn more about dinosaurs. Coming up, we're going to chat with the museum's curator of dinosaurs, Don Henderson, who discusses how unique his museum really is. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of our local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. For people with special needs and disabilities, Ability Skate invites you to a dedicated sensory-friendly public skating program designed especially for you. Taking place Sundays from 1:45 to 3:15 p.m. and Tuesdays from 1 to 2 p.m. at the Civic Ice Arena, you're welcome to put on your skates and glide on the ice in a dimly lit, no-music environment. For details, visit leisure.lethbridge.ca. Discover how Lethbridge has played an important military role in the preservation of world peace and security by visiting the Lethbridge Military Museum at the Vimy Ridge Armory at the Lethbridge Airport. The museum is open to the public each Wednesday from noon to 4 p.m. Special arrangements for other days and times can be made by calling 403-328-6196. Admission is free, but donations are gratefully accepted. For more information, visit lethbridgemilitarymuseum.org. Lethbridge Sport Council's Indoor Roving Gyms program takes place Tuesdays at Emmanuel Lutheran Church from 6 to 7 p.m. and Thursdays at the Service Sports Center from 10 to 11 a.m. This program is for kids ages 5 and under and their caregivers. Come and enjoy an hour of fun and get active. Pre-registration is required and space is limited. For details and to register, visit lethbridgesportcouncil.ca/roving-gyms. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
When some people think of Alberta, it's not only oil, gas, and the Rocky Mountains that come to mind. How about dinosaurs? The province has more than its fair share of reptilian bones. And if you've ever been to Drumheller, you'll know what I'm talking about. And as the curator of dinosaurs at the renowned Royal Tyrrell Museum, Don Henderson has a unique perspective on the rich history of dinosaur discovery in Alberta. He joins me now over Zoom to share his insights and fascinating stories about these incredible creatures and the significant scientific discoveries made right here in our province. Welcome, Dr. Henderson. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, it's nice to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so please maybe tell us briefly about your role there at the museum.
Okay, well, my official job title is Curator of Dinosaurs.
Okay.
So I get paid to study them, write about them, go look for them, respond to reports for fossils from the public or industry. I also help with our public programs, like our education people, and advise on the content in the galleries and stuff. And I just get to follow my nose. As long as any interesting questions related to dinosaurs, I'm allowed to pursue them.
Yeah. Now, have you been fascinated with dinosaurs your whole life?
I've always had competing interests. I first became aware of dinosaurs when I was in kindergarten in a little book. I actually got that book now. And I was amazed there were these giant things. And I've still got my kids' dinosaur books, but I was also really taken with the Apollo space program in the 1970s when I was growing up. So I've always been interested in rockets and space travel and the past.
Sure. Yeah, and it seems like so many little boys have that interest in dinosaurs, and they have like a big collection and stuff. So I am just curious, being that we're in Alberta, what types of dinosaurs have actually been discovered in Alberta?
We are the best place in the world for the horned dinosaurs, so things like Triceratops and its relatives. More than half of all the known kinds are from this province alone. We've got 5 kinds of tyrannosaur. We've got all sorts of duck-billed dinosaurs. We've got armored dinosaurs. The things we don't have are the long-necked sauropods and the stegosaurs, the things with the plates on their backs. Our rocks are too young for stegosaurs, and our ancient environments weren't good for the giant sauropods. They were still around in the United States, but they never got this far north.
That's so interesting. So is there a particular, it's like basically, I'm just kind of wondering, is there a scientific reason behind the abundance of certain types of dinosaur fossils in Alberta?
I think it's so different types of animals prefer to live in different types of habitats. Some habitats are good for preserving things and others are terrible. Like you won't get things in the mountains. Things from deserts aren't very common. Things living right along the shore get bashed up by the waves and lost. But our dinosaurs seem to live on a broad plain to the east of the rising mountains. And it was a good place to be a dinosaur. There was lots of rivers, lots of water, lots of food. And when they died and got into the rivers, they had a really good chance of being buried in sands and muds and staying buried. So it's
hence all the discoveries.
Yeah, and also our climate, extreme freeze thaw, like right now, breaks up rock. Our flash, thunderstorms and really hard rain wear down the rocks. So our climate also really makes it possible to have all these dinosaurs being exposed so often. We can go back to a place like Dinosaur Park every summer and find new stuff that's constantly washing out.
That's fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. Now, is there, you mentioned a number of different types of dinosaurs, but is there a particular dinosaur species that is most unique or most commonly found in Alberta?
I mentioned the horned dinosaurs. So everybody has heard about Triceratops. We've got some Triceratops material, but go back maybe a bit older, about 75 million years ago, and in Dinosaur Park, we've got all sorts of different kinds. Like there's a thing, Centrosaurus is only known from Dinosaur Park, Styracosaurus. There's some other stuff from down near Medicine Hat, Milk River area. Things like Xenoceratops, Coronaceratops. These are all unique to Alberta. And we also get an awful lot of duckbill dinosaurs. I think it's because they were so big and their bones preserved really well. So we've got an awful lot of big, heavy duckbill things, like Corythosaurus. Yeah.
So, what were some of the earliest dinosaur fossils found in Alberta, and who discovered them?
The earliest written report we have is from 1871. There was a missionary type guy, Jean Leroux. He was showing dinosaur bones by the Piegan tribe just north of Dinosaur Park. And then he didn't say what they were, he just said there were these big bones in the ground. And then in 1874, or was it 1873, when they were surveying the 49th parallel, they had their surveyors and the crews marking the border, but they also had a scientist, George Dawson, and he would leave the party and go and survey. And he found dinosaur bones, 1874, I think, near Comrie. He was the best person for the job because he was interested in everything: plants, animals, culture, like the natives, and the rocks and the fossils. So he was the first scientist to really see them. And then, not like a couple of years later, the Geological Survey of Canada started sending people across the West looking for resources like coal and minerals and stuff. And so their geologists, with their better educations, they started finding stuff like at Scabby Butte. Several people went there. And then Joseph Tyrrell found Tyrannosaur bones just near Drumheller in 1884.
Is Drumheller the most significant spot in the province to find? And I know there is a spot kind of down here in southern Alberta as well, like we're close to the border. But
I think the best place is Dinosaur Provincial Park, just north of Brooks. So that's where we get the most. We do have lots of bone up here, but they always tend to be broken up and not as good quality. There are lots of dinosaurs here, but it's very rare to find good ones. And I think when the first professional collectors came through here just over 100 years ago, they skimmed all the good stuff. And now we have to wait a few hundred years for erosion to expose it. But no, I think if you're going to go anywhere to look, Dinosaur Provincial Park is the best. But it's a protected area, so not just anybody can go in.
Oh, well, they need to change that because it seems like it'd be a fascinating educational tool for sure. Are you maybe able to talk about what some of the current projects are that are going on at the Tyrrell Museum, or some of the research that you're involved with regarding dinosaurs?
Well, science is competitive, so we have to play our cards very close to our chest. So I can't tell you exactly what we're working on.
Can't divulge all those secrets, huh?
I can tell you, yes, there's two of us working on dinosaur stuff. We've got people working on turtles and fishes and plants and mammals. And we've got visiting researchers who come to the museum just about every week. We've got people from all over the world coming here. So we really have established ourselves as the place to come if you want to look at rocks and fossils from, say, the last 20 million years of the time of dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so fascinating. So you mentioned a little bit about how the conditions and the climate and the environment in Alberta are kind of a really go-to spot to find these bones. So a little bit about how have the geological conditions in the province contributed to the preservation of these fossils?
Well, so the Rocky Mountains haven't always been there. They started developing maybe about 100 million years ago, and rocks and little microcontinents are squishing up against the west side of North America. The rocks get lifted up, and it's the same time they're getting lifted, the wind and the rain is wearing them down. And there's all this sand and mud being transported east and northeast in these rivers. And if it wasn't for the rising mountains, we wouldn't have the sands and muds to preserve the fossils. And even after the dinosaurs went extinct, the mountain building still continued and the land is being uplifted. So the rocks are getting closer and closer to the surface. And then over the last 100,000 years, we've had the Ice Age, which ended about 14,000 years ago. And when that ice melted, it melted really quick, like maybe in a few centuries. And it cut in the major rivers like the Red Deer River and cut down into these soft dinosaur-bearing rocks. And it's because of that, the ice, if it wasn't for the Ice Age and the massive meltwater, those dinosaurs would still be deep underground. So it all has to work together. You've got to have the dinosaurs, you've got to have them being preserved, you've got to have the right climate, you've got to have that Ice Age. If we didn't have any one of those, we wouldn't have what we have today.
Oh, that's absolutely incredible. What a history lesson there too, as well as a science lesson. It's so interesting. Maybe share with us the most significant discovery in Alberta and why it was so significant.
Well, there's a whole bunch.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Going back to like Joseph Tyrrell's discovery of Albertosaurus, that was a tyrannosaur, and it was discovered like 20 years before Tyrannosaurus. So we knew about tyrannosaurs long before Tyrannosaurus came from Montana. And we've got down Devil's Coulee, down near Warner, we've got the Hipparchosaurus nests and eggs of these duck-billed dinosaurs. From 2010 or 2011, we got the armored dinosaur from Fort McMurray, Boreal pelta. That was a huge surprise. And it's the best preserved armored dinosaur in the world. We've got all the armor in place. We've got skin on the outside. We've got stomach content. It's so well preserved that all the armor is in place. We can't even see the skeleton. We're not moving the armor. But that's just three of the major things we've got.
Oh, that's absolutely fascinating. Besides Alberta, what are some of the best spots in the world?
Well, very similar dinosaurs are just south of the 49th in Montana. Another really famous place is for large dinosaurs is in East Africa, a place called Tendaguru. That's much older, Jurassic Age. South coast of England is actually where the science got started in the early 19th century. They've got early Cretaceous dinosaurs. So the same age as the thing we got from Fort McMurray, but very different animals. China is a big place now for dinosaurs from older than ours. Lots of things preserved with feathers. But actually, there was actually a feathered dinosaur found just across the river from the museum here in the Red Deer River Valley. So we now recognize feathers here. There's all sorts of South America, Argentina, is where they get the biggest things ever known, like Argentinosaurus, which might weigh 50 tons, which is just crazy.
Yeah. And would you say, like, when comparing climates and environment, is it similar to kind of holding that preservation? Is that why we're discovering it in those areas?
Yeah, unfortunately, you can only find them where they get preserved. And the best place to be preserved is on these floodplains with broad rivers and lots of sand and mud. There are some ancient desert locations, like in Mongolia. It's been desert there for a very long time. But you need flowing water with sand and mud to preserve them. So all these environments I just mentioned, they're all very similar, very flat landscapes, lots of water, lots of animals living there who had a really good chance of being preserved after they died.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff. I can see why you went into it. What's the most exciting part about the work that you do at the Tyrrell Museum?
I call them the regular surprises. Every year we get a call from the public or some industry. It's like Fort McMurray or construction sites. They bump into something. You cannot predict where they're going to come from. Every year we find something. So we're out there looking ourselves, but there's these surprises that come up because we're not digging big holes. And every year there's something interesting.
Okay, that's interesting. So when you say you're not digging deep holes, how far down are they actually being located?
Well, if you think in Fort McMurray, they're digging this giant hole in the ground, many tens of meters deep. We would never see that because we only look at the surface. You don't dig. You just look at the surface when you're prospecting. Look for a little trace of bone at the surface, and maybe there'll be something. Or same with digging foundations or roadworks. Again, they were putting in a new bypass just south of Fort McMurray, no, just north of Fort McMurray. We got an amazing marine reptile, a plesiosaur, from there. Or just south, down near, actually south of Lethbridge, the Corite mine where they're mining the gem quality ammonite shell. We got 2007, we got this amazingly complete giant plesiosaur with 76 neck bones. It's got the most neck bones known of any animal. And that was a total surprise.
So fascinating. We could talk about this all day, but it looks like we're about out of time here. But thanks so much for joining me today, Don. Appreciate having you on.
Oh, you're welcome.
Absolutely. Don Henderson is a curator of dinosaurs at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Drumheller, Alberta. Plans for the twinning of Highway 3 in southern Alberta have been talked about for almost 50 years, and now it looks like the ball will finally get rolling. Joining us to discuss this is Bill Chapman. He is a Coaldale Town Councillor and also the president of the Highway 3 Twinning Development Association. What better person to have on than Bill? Welcome to Bridge City News, Bill. Great to have you on today.
Well, thank you for inviting me to join you for this meeting today.
Of course, absolutely. So, Bill, first, for anyone not familiar with the Highway 3 Twinning project, can you maybe give us a brief history of this 50-year discussion and what the goals of this project are?
Well, sure, Jeanette, and maybe we can go back even to the turn of the century. Corridor began in the early 1900s and was called the Red Trail. And from 1932, it became a numbered highway following the CP Rail. And of course, the Highway 3 was branded as the southern branch of the Trans-Canada Highway. So I do remember as a child in the 1960s, taking over 18 hours just to travel from Calgary to Vancouver through the Crow's Nest Pass to Vancouver, as really this was the key route for Trans-Canada travel. It was certainly a most painful trip, and of course then you had to take the same route back home again.
Right, of course, and of course for people who don't know, it runs from east to west, west to east, right? From Medicine Hat right through to the Crow's Nest into British Columbia, so Saskatchewan to BC, right? And of course, it's dubbed the Crow's Nest Highway, right?
That is correct, yes. And actually, in 1988, this highway became part of the National Highway System. So that's really important for listeners and viewers to note that this highway is actually part of the National Highway System of Canada.
Very interesting. So maybe tell us about phase one. This is from Taber to Burdett, Alberta. So you believe that there are maybe economic, recreational, and tourism benefits, as well as safety benefits, of course. So can you explain maybe what the benefits of the economy would be?
Yes, and as a growing province, we do know that every one of our communities is growing. So the impact of having this highway certainly will be the centerpiece to all of the economic activities that will occur and all the economic growth that is going to take place over the next 10 years. And of course, with the agri-food corridor growing, we're going to see a number of mega projects coming up over the next number of years that really will impact all sorts of service levels in Alberta. And of course, Highway 3 will become the cornerstone to all of these needs in southern Alberta.
That's so interesting. I believe the highway will be rerouted around the various towns along the route, right? So, which, it speeds things up for drivers, which is great, but are you getting any pushback from businesses on who might, businesses that might possibly miss out on potential drive-through business?
I don't think so. I would like to speak for the town of Coaldale, and of course, back in the 50s, the Ministry of Transportation talked about routing highways or major highways around municipalities, mainly for economic and safety reasons, safety and efficiency reasons.
Yeah, 100%.
So that was important to note because Coaldale went through those conversations back in the 50s and again in the 1970s when they actually went to work to twin the highway around Coaldale. And if you remember, the old Highway 3 did go right through downtown Coaldale. And so if you were going to look at today's traffic, not only in numbers, but also in regards to the type of traffic that's occurring on Highway 3, downtown Coaldale would not be able to accommodate the amount and the size of traffic that's going through our community today. So if you look at history and then go to what we've encountered today, that the town of Coaldale has already been bypassed once. That being said, our community has grown 4 times that number since the 1970s. We're a community of over 9,000 population today. So if we translate that theory to other municipalities across our corridor, I don't doubt that there will be any concerns about bypassing. I know that chambers of commerce are on side with Highway 3 twinning. They believe that this will be a major source of economic boost to the community in terms of not only travelers, but also economic benefit to the communities. And we know that people still need to come to town for groceries, for parts, for gas, for sports, for school, for church.
Yeah, you name it.
It will, people will still come to town.
Yeah. When I think of the Highway 3 twinning project, of course, the main thing that comes to mind is safety. So, I mean, this could potentially cut down on a lot of accidents and fatalities that we hear about quite a bit. So what did the statistics tell us about improving the safety with the twinning of Highway 3?
That was a really good question. And we know that to bring out statistics on fatalities or collisions, all those sorts of things, my opinion is that one fatality is one statistic too many.
100%.
We need to identify the fact that twinning Highway 3 will be important to everyone for not only for safety, but for comfort. We know that the mix of big trucks and automobiles does not work anymore. And of course, people need to be able to travel in comfort and not be feared about having to travel from Lethbridge to Medicine Hat or Medicine Hat to the Crow's Nest or wherever, so it's important that we have this down and downright.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's a nice big twinned area all through Lethbridge, but as soon as you get outside of those city limits, that's where you start getting into that two-way traffic, and it can get very, very scary in some of those areas, especially once you start getting into the pass and the mountains there. So this is very welcome for sure. What do you see, Bill, as the potential recreational and tourism benefits for this?
Well, the number one reason why people travel anywhere is for an experience. They want to experience what we have to offer here in southern Alberta. And of course, some people like to go to Waterton to experience the mountains, the hiking. Lots of people want to experience our trails. Lots of people want to experience our water reservoirs along here. So people will look on a map, and TripAdvisor happens to be the number one source for people's not only destination but their experience. And with those experiences, they look for the best routed highways that are the safest, that are identified on a map as a major route, so major highway. So this all works together, and it'll be fantastic to see the spin-offs from recreation, from tourism, from all those things that matter down here in the south.
Yeah, yeah. Now, speaking of tourism, of course, one of the main draws along that corridor is the Frank Slide Historical Site. But my understanding is that there's been some controversy over this project happening there because people are kind of worried about the potential impact that it could have on that historical site. And then, of course, the entire town is buried there along with the bodies of those that were killed in that tragic rock slide way back 100-some years ago. So there are some worries to that small community in that area, so that also that they could be cut off from drive-by potential business and tourism. So any thoughts on that?
Sure, we understand and we appreciate and we certainly respect the overall sensitivity and historical impact that this slide particularly has had on the overall community. And of course, now that that there's a historical destination to it, and of course all the other historical destinations, including the mines. You can name a number of tourism destination components to that people are really appreciating today with regards to not only just the Frank Slide itself, but also the other activities that take place there. And of course, people go there as part of cottage country now, and of course people go skiing, people go for watercraft. People, just want to enjoy a different element of our Canadian geography. So Highway 3 leads everyone through the Crow's Nest Pass, and of course, we understand too that the need for rerouting some of the big heavy traffic off of the downtown is really important, and Alberta Transportation has identified that very, very clearly and have offered a number of alignment options for consideration. And of course, the one dilemma that we do have is the fact that the CP Rail already has precedence over their route through the Crow's Nest Pass, and so that kind of confines our options in terms of alignment.
Okay, Bill, do we know when Phase 1 will be completed, and what are the estimated costs for that?
From what we understand is it'll take about 3 years to completion. So if we start in 2024, we can expect possibly that section or that phase of Highway 3 to be open and ready in the next 3 years. The cost from Tabor to Burdett is predicted to cost $180 million.
Wow. Okay, interesting. What kind of feedback are you getting on the twinning project from stakeholders like truckers and the ag sector, et cetera? We talked about businesses a little bit there.
Well, as we know, all our chambers of commerce all along Highway 3 are now reciprocal members of our association, and they are in full support of this project. That means a lot, not only to our chambers, but to all the stakeholders along Highway 3. And of course, we have a number of stakeholders who sit on our board as well and have been advocating very strongly about their need to move goods and services along Highway 3. So we have a number of transport companies. We have some building companies on our board. We have the sugar beet growers. We have the potato growers of Alberta on our board. So we have a number of stakeholders who are very excited about the prospects of twinning Highway 3.
Okay, well, we're almost out of time here, but really quickly, so we know Phase 1 is beginning in 2024. It'll take 3 years. How many phases are there in total, and how long will the whole project take? And when will the next phase begin, Phase 2?
Yes, so there's a total of 8 phases, and so the government is proudly proclaiming a 10-year window for completing these phases. Some of that will be doable, and of course, we know that some of the engineering can take place simultaneously. So some of these phases can go in sequence, or not just in A, B, C, D, and E order. We can certainly see some engineering, some stuff happening simultaneously.
Okay, well, good to know. So we'll look forward to a lot of construction in the future, basically.
Yes, and of course, the way we understand it too is that that there won't be any closures to trans-province traffic.
And then, Bill, just before we go here, are there any final thoughts on this the Highway 320 project?
Absolutely, we want to ensure that that our association is still on board with ensuring that several components to the project be done and done right. Number one would being, of course, rest stops. Number two, being animal crossings. And number three is really what we want to ensure is that there are an adequate number of entrances into our communities where the highway might be bypassed. So those are serious considerations and concerns from the municipalities that have been concerned about bypassing the community. So that is the one thing. The number two thing that we want to ensure is for federal support, and that is that this highway is really part of the Canadian national highway system. So we want to ensure that the federal government understands and knows that they as partners become the component of this twinning system. So Destination Canada has already identified Highway 3 in their tourism in their national tourism strategy, and so we're pleased with that. But again, it's those components that really make this project worthwhile.
And it looks like we're out of time, but Bill, thanks so much for being with us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Bill Chapman is the president of the Highway 3 Twinning Development Association. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.